You've just opened your eyes inside the opulent chambers of the El Karim Palace. The velvet cushions cradle your body, embroidered with gold thread so fine it could have been spun by angels. But luxury here doesn't bring peace. It brings pressure. You're one of over 200 black concubines competing to be seen, not just by the Sultan, but by power itself. Your name now is Zahira. It wasn't the name your mother gave you in your coastal village, but that name was left behind the moment you stepped inside these gates. A soft bell chimes, not for worship, for grooming. You have exactly 10 minutes to make your face appear effortlessly radiant, which, in El Karim terms, means painting it like a portrait and smiling like your life depends on it. Rose oil on your cheeks, crushed. Pearls for glow, and kohl so thick it could write secrets on your eyelids. The tools are sharp, and so are the looks from other women around you. You share this chamber with 3 others, black women like yourself, some young, some seasoned. One pretends to be your sister. Another hasn't spoken to you since you outdanced her during lute training. Privacy? You've never known it. Gossip, however, never takes a breath. It moves faster than prayer through the incense-laced air. One misplaced hairpin can start a rumor that ruins you by sunset. The air smells like jasmine and rose, but underneath, there's something sharper. Ambition, fear, and longing. If someone bottled this scent, it would be called survival. You rise from your embroidered cushion, your satin robe, hand-washed by a 12-year-old servant who already looks at you like a rival, wraps around you like silk armor. You prepare for morning roll call, where the black eunuchs, towering and silent, determine who might get summoned by the Sultan today. This isn't a beauty pageant. It's a battlefield with no blood, just glances, nods, and absences. You cannot leave, you cannot hide, and you cannot afford to be forgettable. Welcome to your day in the Imperial Harem of El Karim, where every breath is a political move, every smile a strategy, and your bed, softer than anything you've ever known, still feels harder than freedom. You step into the steam chamber of the House of El Karim, and instantly it hits you. A thick cloud of rosewater, lemon, jasmine, and something else. You can't quite name, ambition simmering under scented heat. This isn't just a bathhouse. It's the palace's most dangerous room, a battlefield soaked in sweat, steam, and secrets. Zahira walks in slow, her black skin gleaming beneath the towel wrapped around her body like a second layer of strategy. She isn't the newest girl anymore, but still not safe enough to exhale. Inside, every black woman in that room is a contender. The senior concubines move through the marble space like queens, regal, territorial, and lethal. One glance from Madame Sania, the most powerful woman in the harem after the Valid, could end a rising star's journey before it begins. Zahira lowers her eyes but keeps her mind sharp. In this room, no one says what they mean, but every look speaks volumes. Who sits beside whom? Who whispers to which attendant? Who dares to laugh near the Valid's cousin? The silence is loud. Young servant girls scrub your body with loofahs that feel like they're dipped in punishment. One scours Zahira's back so hard she nearly gasps, but doesn't. Showing pain is weakness, and weakness has a scent. Zahira's towel slips slightly. It's nothing really. But Madame Sania sees it. So do the others. One smile curves, one glance hardens. 1,000 meanings in a half-second moment. This isn't bathing. This is surveillance, disguised as ritual. No one dares speak to Zahira directly. Not yet. But she hears plenty. Rumors drift in the mist like spirits. One concubine hasn't been summoned in months. One eunuch passed a forbidden letter. One girl was caught stealing rose oil and vanished the next day. She makes mental notes. Who looked relaxed? Who looked nervous? Which girl refused to meet anyone's eyes? Then, it happens. Zahira catches Lena, a rising black concubine known for her silent elegance, staring at her reflection. Not her face. Her robe folded on the bench. A robe with a thread of gold. Zahira doesn't remember being there yesterday. Message received. The games have started. When Zahira leaves, her skin is glowing. But her mind is heavier. Here, in the palace bath, Nothing is clean, not even the water. In the palace of El-Karim, no one moves without permission. And no one gives permission without going through them, the black eunuchs. They don't speak unless necessary. They don't smile unless it serves a purpose. Their mere presence shifts conversations, freezes laughter, and tightens backs. Zahira has learned this the hard way. These are the men who control the entire flow of the harem, who gets summoned to the Sultan, who gets overlooked, who disappears quietly in the night, never to be mentioned again. Their eyes see everything, and their memory is sharper than any blade in the palace. Zahira learned early that you don't flatter them. That's suspicious. You don't flirt. That's suicidal. And gifts? That's an insult. You survive by becoming something else entirely. Predictable, useful, forgettable only when necessary. She bows her head each time they pass, not too low, just enough to show respect, not desperation. She never speaks unless spoken to. She never delays when called. And above all, she never lets her name linger in their mouths. The eunuch known as Master Jalil is the most feared among them. Tall, dark-skinned, immaculately robed in black with silver embroidery. He controls the roster of the Sultan's summons. One raised brow from him has sent women into exile. One ignored glance has left dreams in ashes. And yet, Zahira watches him. Quietly, closely. She notices which scrolls he carries on Thursdays, which servant he always walks beside when bad news spreads. She tracks which women he lingers near during roll call and which ones he avoids like a dying flame. This is survival, because here in the house of El-Karim, beauty alone means nothing. A flawless face is replaceable, but knowing when to bow, when to vanish, and when to simply exist without drawing fire, that's a skill no one teaches you. Among the other concubines, Zahira's place is still unstable. She's made a hesitant friend, Amira, a black girl from the island coast who smiles too often and dreams too loud. And she's earned an enemy, Rahema, who hasn't spoken a word to her since that look during loot training weeks ago. One blink was all it took to turn silence into warfare. Everything is layered. Compliments carry poison. Laughter is a weapon. Every step Zahira takes is measured against alliances she hasn't even realized she's part of yet. Still, she watches. She listens. A eunuch places a folded paper near Madame Sania's cushion. No one says a word, but Zahira sees the flicker of surprise in Sania's eye. It's gone in a second. Nothing is spoken. Everything is seen. In this palace, power doesn't wear a crown. It wears silence. It moves in shadows. And sometimes it stands at the gate in black robes, deciding who gets remembered and who vanishes without a trace. Zahira is still learning. But today, she's one step closer to staying in the game. By now, Zahira knows, this palace doesn't run on gold or law. It runs on glances, timing, and unspoken rules. She's made one connection, not a friend. That word's too soft. A connection. Amira, the bright-eyed black girl from the southern coast who hums lullabies while threading silver onto velvet. She pretends to love embroidery, but Zahira sees it. She's playing the long game. Every stitch is calculated. They walk together. After Quran lessons, their words are light, poetry, spices, weather. But their eyes? Constantly measuring. One misstep and even a smile could be mistaken for ambition. Then there's Rahema, tall, sharp-featured, born from royal blood. She's been silent ever, since that training session with the lute. Zahira had blinked, just once, while Rahema sang. That was enough. Rahema never spoke to her again. But she watches. Everything in the harem is subtle. Compliments land like daggers. Laughter cuts deeper than blades. And silence? Silence is the loudest language of all. Zahira starts noticing the invisible network of power, the way the room shifts when Madame Sania enters, the way the girls around her adjust their veils just slightly tighter, a signal of humility or maybe fear. She studies the fruit trays during breakfast, who receives the ripest figs, who gets 2 pomegranate seeds instead of 3. These things matter. In El Karim, fruit isn't food, it's a message. Zahira says little. She listens. She listens to the servant girl who coughs whenever gossip walks near. She listens to the way Amira always pauses before saying the name Sania. She listens to the patterns of footsteps at night, the ones that stop at some doors and never at others. Every day she learns something that could save her. She learns how to fold her robe so it rustles just enough to be heard, but not enough to be noticed. She learns how to thank a eunuch with her eyes alone. And she learns never to ask questions. The most dangerous thing in this palace isn't what's said, it's what's never mentioned again. One girl used to sit beside her during poetry. She laughed too often, tried too hard. Then she was gone. No ceremony, no explanation. Her cushion was folded away, her name wasn't spoken. Zahira didn't ask, she just memorized. Because here, memory is your armor. And if you forget where you stand, or who saw you standing there, you won't last long. She's not the most beautiful, not the most talented, but she's becoming something more valuable. She understands the movement of power. In a place where every smile is theater, and every mistake is permanent. That knowledge is the first step toward survival. Zahira once thought life in the royal harem would be full of silk, music, and perfume. It is. But now, she understands the truth. It's not a paradise. It's a perfectly choreographed battlefield. Every day begins with training, not in weapons, but in the deadliest arts: grace, obedience, beauty, and silence. She learns to sit without creasing her robe, to eat without glancing down, to recite Persian poetry while keeping her voice soft enough to be ignored and strong enough to be remembered. They call it finishing school, but Zahira knows better. It's political grooming. She learns music on a lute that feels like it hates her fingers. She memorizes verses from scholars she's never heard of. She studies Ottoman court etiquette, Islamic law, and how to bow just enough to show respect, but never so much that she looks desperate. And during dance lessons, she learns not to faint. That's the real skill, but the true education comes between the lessons. Zahira observes how the Valida Sultan's tray is cleared exactly 4 minutes after she finishes eating. She notes that Master Jalil, the head eunuch, always walks into the chamber right before bad news spreads. She watches the faces of the girls during Quran class, who's paying attention and who's performing for the walls. She keeps her hands folded over a piece of embroidery, a tulip, a dove, maybe both, and pretends to be invisible. But inside, she's archiving everything: names, glances, who sits where, who glares when, who got an extra apricot with breakfast. That apricot? In this palace, that's not dessert. It's a declaration. Her voice? She keeps it locked behind her. Teeth, unless someone 3 ranks above her demands it, and when she speaks, it's brief, humble, insightful, just enough to seem clever, never enough to seem threatening. She's been warned. Be charming, but not bright. Be graceful, but not proud. Be interesting, but not memorable. Zahira has learned to walk the tightrope. She isn't trying to win favor. She's trying to avoid elimination, and yet somehow, she's noticed. Not by the Sultan. Not yet. But by the women who matter. They don't smile at her. That would be too obvious. Instead, she catches the flick of their eyes when she enters a room. The brief pause before they continue speaking. The tiny shift in seating when she's present. She is somewhere between interesting newcomer and quiet threat. And in El Karim, that's a better place than it sounds. Because here, looking harmless is one of the most dangerous things you can do. And Zahira is starting to look very harmless. Indeed. There are 2 kinds of fear inside the harem. One is the fear of being overlooked. The quiet kind, slow and suffocating. The other is worse, the fear of being noticed. Today, Zahira flirts with the second. It begins with a robe. She's just returned from scripture review when a folded garment appears on her sleeping cushion. Not the usual soft gray cotton she's worn since arriving. No, this one is silk, deep rose-colored, embroidered with golden vines that twist like whispers around its hem. She touches it like it might bite. From the Valide's steward? A servant girl says quietly, not meeting her eyes. No explanation, no context. This could mean anything, a reward, a mistake, a trap. Maybe the robe was meant for someone else, and Zahira is now stepping into a narrative that ends with ruin sewn into satin. Still, she puts it on. It fits. Too well. As she walks the corridors, she feels it, the atmosphere change around her. Conversations dip, eyes glance and flick away, and one girl pauses mid-step, staring so hard it's like a blade across Zahira's back. She enters the morning recitation chamber with her spine straight and her face unreadable. She's seated closer to the front than usual, not beside the elite, but no longer hidden with the forgotten. She doesn't ask questions. She smiles once, softly, and keeps her hands folded over a prayer book she's already memorized. Later, that afternoon, the real test comes. A eunuch steps into her chamber. He doesn't speak. He holds out a small silver dish. Upon it, a single pink rose. No message, no name. Just that one fragile bloom. Zahira stares at it like it's a ticking clock. The rose could mean anything. The Sultan may have noticed her, or someone may want it to look that way. Or worse, this could be an assassination in social form. The harem is not kind to girls who rise too fast. Zahira doesn't smile. She doesn't tell Amira. She doesn't even let her own shadow catch her excitement. That shadow has gossiped before. Instead, she presses the rose between the pages of her prayer book. Then she waits. She drinks her sherbet quietly that evening, still dressed in the rose-colored robe. She bows her head a little lower. She speaks, even less. But inside her heart is a war drum, because in El Karim, a silk robe and a single flower could mean everything. Or nothing. And the truth? Both possibilities are equally terrifying. In the palace of El Karim, dinner is never just a meal. It's theater, a performance wrapped in silk, served with pomegranate seeds, and garnished with silence sharp enough to draw blood. Zahira walks into the grand dining hall dressed in the same rose-colored robe. Heads don't turn. That would be too obvious. But she feels it, the stillness around her. A hush that clings to her steps like perfume. She takes her seat, not too close to the center. She hasn't earned that. But not far in the shadows either. Her new placement whispers one thing. We see you now. The room is aglow with gold lanterns and crystal bowls. Eunuchs move soundlessly between the rows, carrying trays of saffron rice, lamb spiced with cloves, sweet fig sherbet, and jeweled dates that look like treasures. Everything is delicious and dangerous. Zahira touches nothing too quickly. She nibbles, with grace, as though she eats for ritual, not hunger. As though her body is nourished by elegance alone. Because here, hunger is a weakness. Appetite is a signal. And taking a second fig could destroy you. A girl across the table, someone new, or maybe reborn in better robes, wears earrings too large for her rank. She smiles at Zahira. Zahira does not smile back. She simply looks away, slowly with precision. She knows this is a test, one of many. Just like the flower, just like the robe, just like the way the girls near her pause their sentences half a second too long. Suddenly, the room shifts. A black eunuch enters, Master Jalil. The air grows tight. He walks slowly, gliding like a shadow with weight. Every concubine keeps eating, but their eyes follow him like prayers on Judgment Day. If he stops at your table, if he hands you a letter, a glance, a single, whispered word, everything changes. Zahira keeps her face composed. He walks past her. She nods lightly, as though she hadn't noticed. As though her heartbeat isn't thundering against her ribs. By the end of the meal, nothing's happened, and yet, everything has. Zahira rises with the others, bows, leaves. Her hands are steady, her eyes serene, her lips almost smile. She's still in the game, still untouched, still being watched. And in the house of El Karim, that means she's doing everything right. Night in the harem is not quiet. It only pretends to be. The lanterns burn low, casting shadows that stretch like secrets. Across the tiled floors, fountains whisper softly outside Zahira's chamber, trying to lull the girls to sleep. But no one truly sleeps. Not here. Every black concubine lies perfectly still beneath embroidered blankets, breath shallow, eyes closed, hearts wide awake, waiting, wondering. Will the eunuch knock tonight? Zahira stares at the ceiling, the rose still pressed in her prayer book, her robe folded carefully at the foot of her bed. It's been 3 days since she received it. 3 days of stares, 3 days of silence, 3 days of pretending she doesn't care, but she does, they all do. Somewhere in a chamber gilded with incense and ivory, the Sultan makes his choice. Maybe by name, maybe by instinct, maybe just because he saw a girl eat a fig with too much grace. There is no pattern, no logic, only tension wrapped in silk and anxiety perfumed with jasmine. Across the room, Amira shifts in her bed for the 6th time. Rahima hasn't moved at all. Her stillness is a message. I expect to be chosen. Zahira lies still, lips pressed, pulse pounding like it wants to escape. Then, footsteps. Soft, deliberate, certain. A eunuch's shadow crosses the hallway. A door creaks open. Somewhere, not hers. A name is whispered, not hers. And suddenly Zahira is breathing again. Not relief, not disappointment, but a strange mixture of both. A taste of safety soaked in shame. She turns over and closes her eyes. She dreams, but not of home. Home is a blur now. She dreams of that girl across the table with the oversized earrings, of the eunuch's passing glance, of the rose in her hand and what it might have meant. She wakes just before dawn, unchosen, unshattered, unchanged. And in this palace, that isn't failure, it's a diplomatic victory. There are 2 stories every girl in the harem knows. One is the fairy tale, where the Sultan sees you, speaks your name, and your life transforms into gold, diamonds, and legend. The other is what actually happens. Zahira's story begins in silence. It's night again. No bell, no footsteps, just the still air of anticipation. Then a knock. Not soft, not urgent, final. A black eunuch stands at her door. He doesn't speak. He only bows, low, deliberate. Zahira rises. No questions. She's been trained for this. Her robe is already folded. Her veil is already waiting. Her heartbeat, loud enough to rattle her ribs. She follows him down endless marble corridors, past flickering lanterns and guards who never blink. The palace is asleep, but she can feel every eye that ever watched her from behind curtains. She walks slower than usual, not from fear, but to steady herself. She's stepping into the unknown, not the dream, not the fantasy, the reality. They reach a gilded chamber bathed in sandalwood and shadows. Inside, silence thick as velvet. Zahira sees herself reflected in polished brass walls and tiled mosaics that glitter like stars. An attendant adjusts her veil, places a final drop of rose oil behind her ear, then leans in and whispers, "Smile, but not too much. Speak only if spoken to, and whatever happens, don't trip." Zahira breathes. Then the door opens, and there he is, the Sultan, the most powerful man in the empire, a black king draped in silk with a gaze too still to read. He doesn't smile. He doesn't rise. He simply asks, "Your name." Not the one her mother gave her, the new one, the name this palace carved into her like a brand. She says it. He nods, then asks where she's from. She lies, beautifully. She speaks of poetry. He listens. He hands her a fig. Just one. A test. A metaphor. A warning. In this palace, even fruit comes with hidden meanings. Zahira peels it slowly, gently, offers a phrase she's memorized for moments like this. Something about sweetness hiding bitterness, about appearances, about restraint. He smiles. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe the light shifts. They talk. Briefly, then silence. The kind that weighs more than words. At dawn, she is dismissed. No words of praise, no condemnation. She walks back alone, heart still beating, skin still perfumed. Future completely uncertain, but one thing is clear, she has been noticed, and now, everything is about to change. Dawn breaks, but Zahira doesn't feel the light, she feels the weight. She's back in her chamber now, but something has shifted. Not on the outside, on the inside of the air. She hasn't slept. Not really. She reclined beside the Sultan, the man every concubine dreams of, and tried not to sweat through her perfume. She remembers her words. Maybe. She said something about poetry. Or goats. Maybe both. It doesn't matter. What matters is, she was summoned. She was seen. And now? Now comes the cost. The eunuchs say nothing when she walks past them. That's good. Silence is always safer than a smirk. But the women see everything. No one addresses her directly. That would be too bold. But Zahira feels it, the shift, like a thread pulled just slightly on a perfect embroidery. At breakfast, her seat has changed. She's closer to the center, not quite among the favored, but no longer one of the invisible. Her sherbet is colder than everyone else's. That's a message. Amira looks at her without looking. Rahima lifts her glass a little higher, just once. A nod that says, I see you. Or maybe, be careful. Even, the servants have changed. One leaves a pomegranate on her tray. She stares at it for a moment too long. Pomegranate means fertility. That's not a gesture. It's a signal. Now, every movement is observed. Every syllable evaluated. She folds her prayer shawl with perfect corners. She keeps her smile soft. Her glance is brief. She moves like a woman who belongs here. Because now, she does. But behind the calm face is a mind on fire. Zahira knows what's coming. This is the ladder no one talks about. The one that floats instead of leaning against a wall. The one that snaps under too much ambition. She's been noticed. That's the first step, and it might also be the last. Now she's being measured, not by guards, not by the Sultan, by the women. The ones who ruled this palace before she arrived. The ones who once wore robes like hers. The ones who are still smiling, and still waiting for her to fall. Zahira says nothing. She simply lifts the pomegranate off her tray and sets it gently back down. She's not ready to be crowned. But she's no longer safe from the game. There's a new rhythm to Zahira's steps now. Not faster, not slower, just calculated. She walks through the harem like a woman who belongs, but isn't sure she should. That's the balance. That's the game. If you seem too pleased, they'll call you arrogant. If you act too humble, they'll brand you manipulative. If you smile too long, someone will think it's a threat. If you trip over your robe, that's just unfortunate, but still gossip-worthy. Zahira walks the tightrope every concubine dreads and dreams of. The robe still hangs in her chamber, freshly steamed. The rose is still pressed inside her prayer book, its petals drying like a secret kept too long. And the whispers? They're growing louder. A girl she never spoke to before offers her fig paste at breakfast. Another lingers too long beside her cushion after poetry recitation. Everyone is watching. No one is saying a word. And the older concubines? They show nothing. Their faces are masks carved from patience, their eyes unreadable. But Zahira knows. They've seen this rise before. They've seen girls step forward, glowing with hope. And they've seen those same girls vanish beneath the silk like smoke. Still, there are signs. Her new chamber is slightly larger. The light falls just right across her bedding. The mirror doesn't distort her face into something medieval. There are 2 extra cushions near the window. That's not kindness. That's a warning. She's rising, slowly, carefully, like steam rising in the bathhouse, visible, fleeting, and potentially scalding. She's given a new hairpin the next morning. Mother of pearl, shaped like a tulip. She wears it like a weapon, not to impress, to declare, I am not hiding. The Valid Sultan steward nods at her in the corridor. Just once. That gesture alone sends ripples through the air. It's not approval, not affection. It's a flicker of attention. And in the harem, attention is everything. Now the other girls split around her like water around a rising stone. Some smile, some don't. She's categorized now. The friendly opportunists, the silent threats, and one terrifying girl with eyes like coal and a grin that whispers revenge. Zahira greets them all, the same, with a nod, a silence, a glance that says, I see you, I respect you, but I will outlive you. She adjusts her hairpin in the mirror, straightens her robe, and walks into the next lesson. She says nothing, but her presence says it all. She's climbing, and she knows the ground is watching. In the palace of El Karim, there are few moments that freeze a room. Being looked at by the Valid Sultan, the Sultan's mother, the architect of the harem, the storm behind every silk curtain, is one of them. Today, Zahira receives that look, not a glance, not a passing flick of disinterest. Look, full, deliberate, measured, the kind of look that slices through silk and studies what lies beneath the skin. She had only bowed as she always did, graceful, respectful, humble. But when she lifted her eyes, the Valides were waiting, and they did not look away. Zahira panics, internally. Externally, she's flawless. Her bow is precise, her gaze lowers again, her face doesn't crack. But inside, she's unraveling, because when the Queen Mother notices you, one of two things happens. You're summoned, or you're eliminated. Hours later, a steward delivers a message to her chamber, not a summoning, not a threat, an invitation. She is to assist with the Valides' charitable sewing initiative. It sounds gentle, innocent, kind, but Zahira knows better. This is a test disguised as embroidery. The chamber she enters is full of older concubines, women whose eyes have seen queens rise and disappear. The silence in the room isn't heavy. It's surgical. She bows just right, not too deep, not too proud. She takes a seat near the window, threads a needle, and waits. No one tells her what to say. That's part of the test. Eventually, the Valid speaks, softly, precisely. She asks where. Zahira was educated. Zahira answers, a mosque school near the coast. True enough to be safe, she asks Zahira's favorite surah. Zahira names one about patience. The room tightens. Then, the Valid asks, have you ever met someone who truly understands power? Zahira pauses. The question isn't a trap. It's a mirror. She responds carefully. Only those who know when not to use it. The Valid smiles. Not at her. Near her. Which, in the world of the harem, is practically a coronation. When it ends, Zahira bows again. Her hands are steady, her face calm. She exits with the expression of someone who just stitched a dove onto a handkerchief. Not someone who just walked a blade's edge in front of the most dangerous woman in the empire. Back in her chamber, Amira stares at her like Zahira just rode in on a lion. She looked at you, she whispers. Zahira doesn't reply, but yes, and she's still sweating. The knock comes at dusk, not urgent, not impatient, intentional. Zahira opens the door to find a eunuch holding a folded invitation. No seal, just a single line. Join me for tea. No name is written. It doesn't need one. Everyone in the harem knows who it's from. Lady Nasira, the Sultan's favored consort, the one whose voice never rises, the one whose eyes could undress an army and still look modest doing it, the one whose name is spoken like a lullaby, soft, sweet, and full of blades. Depending on who you ask, Lady Nasira is either the harem's guardian angel or its executioner in silk. Zahira accepts, of course, because in El Karim, turning down an invitation like this is like refusing to swim when the tide pulls you out. You don't say no, you just pray you float. She dresses with care, not too extravagant, that's threatening. Not too plain, that's insulting. She chooses a pale blue gown with mother-of-pearl buttons and a simple gold pin in her hair. She adds one touch, a single rose-colored thread woven into her sash. a whisper of memory. She enters the tea room. It's silent, fragrant with clove, orange blossom, and something colder underneath. Something like intent. Lady Nasira reclines on a velvet cushion alone, her robe embroidered with vines so intricate they seem to move when she breathes. She does. Not rise. She simply gestures. Zahira bows, then sits, gracefully, quietly, measured. Nasira pours the tea herself. That's not generosity. That's symbolism. She speaks softly, but her words cut through the room like blades dipped in sugar. I've heard whispers, she says, that you've caught some interesting eyes. Zahira sips her tea. Whispers are like incense, my lady. Lovely, but they vanish. Nasira smiles. It's beautiful and terrifying. What follows is not a conversation. It's a dance of veiled threats and delicate compliments. Nasira praises Zahira's posture, her embroidery, her restraint. Each compliment is a question. Each smile is a warning. Zahira listens more than she speaks. She praises the Valide, the Sultan's court, the generosity of her elders. She mentions nothing about roses, robes, or rumors. Nasira watches her like a cat watching a candle, curious, but ready to strike. By the second cup of tea, Zahira's hand hasn't shaken once, and then it ends. Nasira dismisses her with a smile that could bless or destroy. Zahira bows, leaves, and exhales for the first time in an hour. She doesn't know if she's just been recruited, warned, or claimed. But she knows one thing. Lady Nasira knows her name now, and in this palace, that is both the highest honor and the deepest danger. In the palace of El Karim, words are like spices, used sparingly, carefully, and always with purpose. Today, Zahira is invited to the music chamber, not for performance, but for presence, an unspoken test. She enters quietly, veiled in soft green silk and bows with flawless form. The air is heavy with rose incense and anticipation. Seated on brocade cushions are 5 of the harem's most senior black concubines, women whose names are never spoken loudly, only whispered behind doors, women who have the Sultan's ear, or once did. Women who could end a reputation with a pause. They do not greet her. That, too, is a test. Zahira finds her place, not too close to the circle, not too far in the corner. She sits with her hands folded, face relaxed, eyes lowered, just enough to show deference and strength. This is not hospitality. This is a tribunal wrapped in lace. The concubines begin to speak, softly, elegantly. They discuss poetry, theology, philosophy, and one another, always indirectly. Zahira listens. She nods once, smiles once, but offers nothing unless directly asked. The room shifts. One of the elder women, Lady Mirembe, sets down her lute and turns to her. A simple question. What is your interpretation of Rumi's verse about stillness? Zahira knows this isn't about poetry, it's about timing. She pauses, not long enough to seem unprepared, but just enough to look thoughtful. Then she answers, stillness is not silence, it's listening with your soul. The room stills. 1. Woman sips her tea. Another raises a brow. Lady Mirembe nods, slow and deliberate. Zahira has passed, but the test isn't over. Next they mention the Walide's charitable initiatives. A casual reference, or so it seems. Zahira says nothing critical. She praises the intention, not the politics. She uses words like graceful, timeless, visionary, nothing too clever, nothing too bland. Her every sentence is a balancing act, respectful, reflective, and safe. She's playing chess without a board. By the time the gathering ends, Zahira has spoken less than a dozen sentences, and somehow, her name is on more lips than it was yesterday. Not loudly, not publicly, but in the places that matter. She bows before leaving, her heart steady, her mind racing. Today, she said almost nothing, and in El Karim, that's how you survive. That's how you ascend. In the harem, true danger never arrives loudly. It arrives in silence, wrapped in silk and sealed with nothing but implication. This morning, Zahira finds a box on her cushion, small, velvet, tied with a ribbon the color of dried rose petals and possibly veiled judgment. No name, no note, just the box. She opens it slowly, the way you'd open a door you aren't sure you're allowed to enter. Inside, a bracelet, delicate gold filigree inlaid with turquoise stones that shimmer like secrets under pressure. It is beautiful. Too beautiful. Too expensive to be casual. Too subtle to be royal. Too specific to be anonymous. Amira sees it. She raises an eyebrow, says nothing. That's either respect or fear. Or both. Zahira says nothing either. She slides the bracelet onto her wrist with the care of someone handling a crown dipped in poison. Because in the house of El Karim, a gift isn't just a gesture, it's a signal, a claim, a trap, a question. Sometimes, all three. By midday, the air is thick with murmurs. She received a gift, someone whispers at the fountain. From whom? She didn't say. She wouldn't dare. But not saying is its own answer. By lunchtime, the rumors have evolved. Zahira has allegedly received a secret message, a proposal of patronage, an heirloom from the Valide herself. All of it false, all of it believable. That's the danger. And then, a warning. While trays are being cleared, a young servant girl, barely older than 12, trips near Zahira's cushion. Her tray clatters. Her voice is barely a whisper. Be careful who puts things in your hands when they can't say it to your face. She gathers the cups and vanishes. Zahira doesn't react. She finishes her sherbet slowly, gracefully, like someone completely unbothered by whispers, while her mind rewinds every conversation of the last week. Who wants her protected? Who wants her watched? Who wants her gone? That night she removes the bracelet. Not out of fear, out of control. She tucks it beneath her pillow, where even her dreams can't wear it freely. Because in El Karim, a gift is rarely about affection. It's about ownership, position, power, and sometimes the most dangerous thing you can wear is proof that someone, somewhere, has started betting on your survival. It arrives just before dawn, not delivered by a eunuch, not whispered by a maid, but left quietly on her writing table, a folded letter sealed with imperial blue wax, the seal of the Sultan's inner court. Zahira doesn't move at first. She just stares at it, because in this palace, paper holds more weight than gold. Words are sharper than daggers, and an invitation can feel like a threat. She breaks the seal. The script is elegant, written by someone educated, trusted, dangerous. The message is clear. You are to be elevated, new quarters, new rank, new status, closer to the Sultan, closer to power, farther from anonymity, farther from safety. Zahira folds the letter carefully, as though it might shatter if touched the wrong way. It looks like a promotion. But here, a promotion is just a prettier word for exposure, and exposure is where girls disappear. She is given until sunset to respond. So Zahira walks the gardens, the ones she once hid in, behind elder concubines who never saw her. The ones where she once memorized who laughed too hard, who whispered too softly, who sat too close to power. Now she walks them alone. The tulips are in bloom, soft, delicate, watching. She passes the fountain where she first heard her name, in someone else's mouth. Passes the bench where she and Amira once giggled over songs they barely understood. Everything feels smaller now. Everything feels closer. Her name is being spoken in rooms she's never entered. Her story is being shaped by hands she's never met. Her silence is being interpreted as strategy. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That night, as the call to prayer echoes softly across the marble, Zahira dresses, not like a girl hoping to be chosen, like a woman who has already decided. She crosses the courtyard, steps past the silken curtains that divide the known from the dangerous, and she answers, not with a word, with a bow, with a step, with the stillness of someone walking toward a throne, or toward erasure. Because in the house of El-Karim, when you rise, you don't climb stairs, you walk into silence, and what happens next decides everything. There are rooms in El-Karim that no one speaks of, not because they are forbidden, but because they are too powerful to be named. Zahira enters, one of them tonight. She's escorted by a silent eunuch whose face might as well be carved from stone. He says nothing. He walks like he's delivering her to judgment, not to privilege. The halls are different here, quieter, wider, colder, lit with oil lamps that burn without flicker, casting shadows that don't move, as if time itself has been told to hold its breath. They reach a tall curtain, thick, dark, motionless. The eunuch stops. Without a word, he lifts the curtain. Zahira steps through, and everything changes. The air smells of amber, parchment, and distance, the scent of secrets sealed by power. This is not a harem chamber. This is a council room. Its floors are tiled in imperial blue. The walls are lined with scrolls. The cushions are arranged in deliberate circles, not for comfort, but for strategy. At the center sits a woman, not the Sultan, not the Valid, someone between. She is older than Zahira expected, not ancient, but carved by years of watching. Draped in gray silk, hair covered, eyes lined with kohl so dark they feel bottomless. No jewels, just presence. Zahira bows, deep. The woman gestures for her to sit. No words are wasted. You have been seen, the woman says. You have been measured. Zahira nods. What you become next, she continues, is no longer up to charm or chance. Silence. It is up to choice. Zahira waits. The woman places something between them. A scroll, a ring, a single dried lily petal. No explanation, just symbols. Each one means something. Zahira studies them. The scroll, knowledge. The ring, alignment. The lily, memory. Together, a contract. You will advise, the woman says. When asked, you will observe. Even when it burns, you will speak truth, but only when it serves. Zahira doesn't ask what happens if she refuses. She already knows. In El-Karim, there are no refusals, only reassignments, to silence, to shadow, to chambers that never echo again. She picks up the ring, slides it onto her finger. A perfect fit. The woman nods. Once, Zahira rises, and when she steps out from behind, the curtain. She is not the same girl who walked in. She is no longer merely watched. She is now part of the watching. The ring on Zahira's finger is small, unremarkable. But every woman in the harem notices it, and none dare ask about it. Because it's not the kind of ring you earn with beauty, it's the kind you're given when someone trusts your silence more than your smile. Zahira wears it like a secret sewn into her skin. Her days change immediately. She no longer attends language lessons, no longer sits in the embroidery circle, no longer lingers near the Sultan's path. Instead, she is summoned, by different voices, in different corridors, always discreet, always alone. She's handed notes that self-destruct in fire bowls. She's asked to listen at doorways, to observe interactions, to catalog tone, hesitation, subtext, not to spy, to understand. Because now Zahira is not just a concubine, she's a vessel, a mirror, a messenger in plain silk. Her first real task arrives quietly. She is given a scroll listing the names of 3 harem women. No instruction, no context. One of the names is familiar, Rehema, once her ally. Now, a possible threat. She watches Rehema during a tea ceremony. Nothing obvious, but her laughter is too sharp, her compliments too generous. Then there's Halima, the second name, too quiet, always in the shadows, folds towels with precision sharp enough to wound. The third is a mystery, a woman Zahira has never seen, though her name echoes like a forgotten tune. Zahira doesn't ask questions, she records details, who sits where, who looks when, who speaks. Last, and she begins to see it, a current, beneath the silks and songs, a secret campaign unfolding like a fan behind closed lips. Rehema is gathering influence, Halima is carrying messages. And the unknown woman? Zahira finds her one evening, reading by lantern light in a servant's hallway. No robes, no rank, just eyes like steel wrapped in softness. She nods at Zahira once, as if to say, "Yes, I know who you are now too." Back in her chamber, Zahira writes a short message. The currents are shifting. One sails openly, one swims beneath, one waits in the dark. She sends it off in a folded petal, the code of her new role. She's not playing the game anymore. She's part of the board, and with every whisper she records, Zahira understands one thing more clearly than ever. Power doesn't roar in El Karim. It whispers, and she has finally learned to listen. There's a knock at Zahira's door. Not the kind that announces trouble, the kind that tries not to. She opens. It's slowly. It's Amira, her friend, her shadow, her constant in a world that changes with every breath. But tonight, Amira's eyes are filled with something Zahira has never seen in them before. Fear. She steps inside and shuts the door behind her without a word. Then, in a whisper so faint it might as well be smoke, she says, "They think I told someone about the Valid's medicines." Zahira stills. Not because it's shocking, but because it makes perfect sense. Amira had been near the infirmary 3 nights ago. Zahira remembers now. She'd said it was to help with bandages, but someone's twisted that moment, fed it into the mouth of a rumor, and now it's a threat with Amira's name on it. Zahira feels the ring on her finger like a weight. She knows what this is, a trap. Not for Amira, for her. Because the harem doesn't just watch what you say. It watches who you protect. If Zahira moves too quickly, she's exposed. If she hesitates, she's a traitor. She asks gently, "Did you tell anyone?" Amira shakes her head. "I swear it. I said nothing." And Zahira believes her. But belief doesn't change politics. That night, Zahira sends no messages. She writes no reports. She just stares at the candlelight until it gutters. In the morning, she's summoned, not by the woman in gray, not by the Sultan, by Lady Nasira. She waits. For Zahira in a marble chamber filled with gold birds and empty teacups. She's already sipping pomegranate syrup. She doesn't offer any. "You're close to the girl," Nasira says. No emotion. Zahira answers, "We share history." "History can be burned," Nasira replies, "especially if it stains the palace." Zahira doesn't flinch. She just waits. Then Nasira leans forward. "If you want to keep rising, my dear, be careful who you pause for. It's not advice. It's a sentence." Zahira nods once, bows low, and leaves. That night, she returns to her chamber and finds Amira waiting, still afraid, still loyal. Zahira says only this: "If anyone asks, you spent last night with the kitchen matrons. You were learning to stew dates for the Valides fast." Amira blinks. "But I wasn't." Zahira cuts in. "Now you were." And just like that, the story is planted. The thread is rewoven. Zahira doesn't send a message that night either. Sometimes, power isn't what you say. It's what you don't allow to be written. Because in El Karim, loyalty doesn't wear a crown. It wears a mask. And Zahira just chose hers. The danger doesn't knock this time. It hides. Inside her pillow, Zahira wakes. Before dawn, something she's grown used to since stepping behind the curtain of power. She stretches, moves to rise. Then, a sharp prick. She lifts the pillow. There it is. A sewing needle. Small, thin, almost invisible. Positioned just so, where her neck would have rested if she had shifted a little deeper in her sleep. It's not an accident. It's not a message. It's a warning, and warnings in El Karim don't come twice. She doesn't scream, doesn't panic. She wraps the needle in a linen cloth, folds it once, twice, a third time, as if tucking away a secret she already knew. Then she does something that surprises even her. She smiles, not out of relief, out of recognition. She's arrived. Because power in this palace isn't real until someone tries to kill you. Later in the garden courtyard, she meets with Halima, the quiet one, the one whose name had once been listed in Zahira's assignment. They walk slowly, casually, as if discussing embroidery or prayer times. Zahira leans closer. There was a needle in my bed. Halima doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, just murmurs, "That's not a warning. That's an invitation." Zahira asks, "To what?" Halima replies softly, "To the next level." That night, Zahira doesn't remove the ring. She doesn't sleep deeply. She doesn't speak to Amira. She just thinks. Because now, she knows someone is afraid of her, and fear is currency. She lights a candle, the same kind she's used to burn messages before. This time she doesn't send a message. She sends a name, just one, folded into rose-scented parchment, pressed beneath wax with the symbol of the Grey Council. Lady Rahema. Zahira isn't certain Rahema sent the needle, but she's certain Rahema wants to see her fall. And in El-Karim, survival isn't always about proof. Sometimes it's about prevention. The note is delivered. The candle extinguished, Zahira lies back on a new pillow, one she inspected herself. And as sleep claims her, she whispers the words that echo like armor. Now they know I'm not afraid to answer back. 3 days pass. No whispers. No glances. No shift in the wind. Too quiet. In the harem, silence doesn't mean safety. It means the trap has been set. Zahira keeps to herself. She practices modesty, humility, routine, all the things that once kept her invisible. But invisibility no longer fits her. She walks with weight now. Every step carries intent. And then it happens. A summons, not from Lady Nasira, not from the woman in gray, not even from the Sultan, but from the Valide herself, the Grand Matron, the empire behind the empire, the mother of power. Zahira is led through corridors she's never seen before. Walls of red marble, lanterns that flicker gold, and ceilings carved with the names of kings and lovers long buried. She kneels before the Valide. The older woman does not speak at first. She just sips from a silver cup, staring at Zahira with eyes that see generations. Then, calmly, "You named a woman." Zahira lowers her gaze. "Yes, my lady." "You offered no proof." A pause. "Only instinct." Zahira responds. "Instinct is all we're allowed to keep once we give up our freedom." The Valide leans back, not angry, not impressed, just measuring. "Do you think that makes you loyal?" Zahira doesn't answer. The Valide sets down her cup. Rahema is gone. A chill rushes through Zahira. "Not punished," the Valide clarifies. "Reassigned. To the summer house in Basra. The kind of place where people forget your name after 3 moons. Zahira bows. "Thank you, my lady. But the Valide isn't done." "Don't mistake mercy for approval," she says, voice like silk, drawn across. "Glass, you acted without command. You played a piece before you knew the whole board." A deeper silence follows. Then, a shift. "But you were right." Zahira dares a glance upward. The needle wasn't hers. The Valide continues. "But..." She had offered one. Zahira's breath catches. She hadn't just named a rival. She had unmasked a future threat. The Valide waves her hand once. "That will be all." Zahira rises. As she's escorted back through the maze of halls, something settles inside her. She had struck, and the court had answered. Not with punishment, with recognition. But in El-Karim, recognition always comes with a price. Because now, every woman in the harem knows Zahira is not just watched, she's dangerous. And from this moment on, she can never afford to be wrong again. In El-Karim, men rarely enter the harem. And when they do, it is not as men, but as titles, shadows, rumors. So when Prince Idris walks through the pearl gate of the eastern wing, every conversation stops. Every breath stills. Every woman lowers her gaze, except one, Zahira. She doesn't stare. She doesn't smile, she just watches. as he enters the courtyard, like he already knows something's changed. He's not the Sultan's heir. He's the Sultan's half-brother, older, sharper, too educated to be forgotten, too careful to be fully trusted. He isn't here for pleasure. He's here for confirmation. Later, Zahira is summoned again, not formally, quietly, to the blue reading room. It's empty, except for him. Prince Idris sits near the window, reading a scroll he never looks at. He doesn't greet her with royal pomp, no flourish, no pretense, just, "You're the one who saw Rahima coming before anyone else?" Zahira remains standing. "I saw what I was allowed to see," she says. He smiles faintly. "Then you looked more deeply than most." She does not thank him. Compliments are often traps, especially when spoken by men who've never needed permission to speak. He studies her like she's a book no one dares open. "Do you believe in ambition?" he asks. "I believe in survival," she replies. "And what if survival demands ambition?" Zahira steps closer. "Then I'll sharpen it, like a blade." Something flickers in his eyes, not lust, not admiration, something more dangerous. Recognition. They speak for 20 minutes. About nothing, about everything. History, loyalty, poetry, politics dressed in metaphors, and when she leaves, she carries nothing with her, except the weight of being noticed by a man who doesn't make careless visits. That night, Amira speaks first. Why was he here? Zahira answers without turning. To see the garden. But she knows better. He came to see what's blooming in the center of it. The next morning, the palace changes. The guards at her hall stand taller. The glances she receives are sharper. The silence around her is no longer heavy. It's electric. Because in El Karim, the gaze of a prince isn't affection, it's attention. And attention here is always the beginning of a war. It arrives at sunrise, wrapped in ivory linen, tied with a silk ribbon the color of the sea at midnight. No note, no seal, just a book, leather-bound, aged, its title, etched in gold, The Art of Listening to Power. Zahira turns the first page, handwritten in the corner, a single line, for the one who already hears what others fear to speak. There's no signature, but she knows who sent it, Prince Idris. She places the book on her shelf, not to display it, but to measure its weight, because in El Karim, a gift is never just a gift. It is a message, a key, a mirror, and sometimes an invitation to fall. Later that day, during the ceremonial incense lighting, he appears again. Not in her path, but within her sight. Far enough to seem distant, close enough to feel deliberate. He never looks directly at her, but Zahira has learned that power rarely needs to look. It knows when it's being felt, Amira notices. He's circling you like a hawk, she mutters. Zahira responds, quiet as breath. Or testing if I'll look up. She doesn't, but that night she writes, not to the Valide, not to the woman in gray, to herself. One sentence. The moment you become desired by power, you become a danger to it. She places the note under her pillow. Not as a diary, as a warning. Because the palace is changing again. Suddenly, the women who once dismissed her are watching her movements. Suddenly, the guards nod slower when she walks past. Suddenly, whispers start with her name and end in silence. Zahira knows this isn't affection. This is a test. Will she use the prince? Will she let herself be used, or will she hold the line between being a woman and being a weapon? She remembers what Halima once said. Men don't fall in love with harem girls. They fall into strategy. The next morning, Zahira returns the book. No note, no words. Just a single lily petal inside the front page, a symbol from the inner circle. It says, I read what you meant, but I am not yours. Not yet. Because in El Karim, the most powerful thing a woman can do is not accept the crown too early. The betrayal doesn't arrive with knives. It arrives with a question, whispered in Zahira's ear by a trembling servant at dusk. Why did you tell Halima about the prince? Zahira freezes. Because she didn't. She never mentioned Idris to Halima, never even said his name out loud outside her own chamber. But someone has. And now, the palace is rumbling. Later that evening, in the moonlit bath chamber, Zahira confronts her. Halima is scrubbing jasmine petals into her arms, face calm, hands practiced, too practiced. Zahira says nothing at first, just waits. Until finally, "You told them." Halima blinks. "Told who what?" Zahira doesn't blink. "That he sent me the book." Silence. Then Halima offers the one thing more. Dangerous than denial, a half smile. "You're not the only one they watch now." The air thickens, no shouting, no threats, just quiet betrayal, dressed in perfume. Zahira steps closer. You think aligning with them protects you, but they don't reward loyalty, they consume it. Halima turns her face slightly, then whispers, "We're all being consumed. I just chose to burn slower." Zahira doesn't answer. She leaves, because in El Karim, anger is a weapon you use once. But strategy? That's a blade you sharpen every night. By morning, the damage has spread. Servants mutter. Matron eyes linger too long. The Valide's steward makes a passing remark about girls who rise too quickly. And the prince? He sends nothing. No scroll. No glance, not even silence, just absence, which is worse, because now Zahira doesn't know if he's protecting her or distancing himself. That night, she writes again, but not a report, a decision. She lights a candle, pulls out a piece of gold-threaded parchment, and writes a name, Halima. Then beneath it, the mirror cracked, the reflection turned. What was once useful is now dangerous. She folds it carefully, seals it, and delivers it through the night courier. Because this isn't about revenge. This is about restoring balance. Zahira doesn't sleep. She sits by the window, watching the stars fade. And when the sun finally rises, she whispers only this. One by one they taught me the game. Now I play it better than they ever feared. Halima disappears before dawn. No farewell, no explanation, no ceremony. Just a folded prayer robe left on her bedding and a single overturned tea bowl, a quiet mark of erasure. The harem notices. The matrons whisper, but no one dares ask. Because, in El Karim, when someone vanishes, everyone looks the other way, except Zahira. She walks through the morning like nothing's changed, but inside, a storm churns. She didn't want Halima gone. She wanted her contained, watched, controlled, not removed. Because every woman eliminated leaves a gap, and gaps in power don't stay empty for long. By midday, the atmosphere has shifted. The Valide's steward nods when Zahira passes, a gesture of subtle approval. The kitchen maids offer her sugared figs, not for sweetness but allegiance. Even the senior concubines glance at her now, with caution. Zahira has crossed another invisible threshold. She's no longer the girl who once fetched ink and jasmine water. She's the one who can erase you with a sentence. But power comes with a price, and its shadow arrives by nightfall. Another note, no seal, no signature, just 6 words. Was it worth losing a sister? Zahira reads it twice, then burns it, because the note isn't from Halima. It's from someone else watching, someone closer than she thought. And the prince? He returns, not with gifts, not with riddles, not with flirtation, with silence. He appears during the glass lighting ceremony, robes darker than ink, posture stiff with decision. He walks past Zahira, pauses for a breath, and keeps walking. No words, no glance, just distance, sharp enough to bleed. Zahira doesn't follow. She just watches him go, knowing what his silence says. I saw what you did. I won't stop you, but I won't protect you either. That night, she doesn't send messages. She doesn't light candles. She sharpens her mind, because now the palace knows she can act, and soon they'll ask, will she act again? Or will she finally fall? Zahira whispers to the dark, let them wonder, let them wait. Because in El Karim, the most dangerous woman isn't the one who strikes, it's the one who chooses when not to. It arrives folded in silver silk. No emblem. No name. Only 3 words, stitched in golden thread. You are invited. Zahira unfolds it slowly. Inside is a time, a place, and a symbol. The crescent of Khazir, a foreign kingdom, far to the west, rich in trade, rare stones, and ancient secrets. Its envoys had arrived 3 days ago, guests of the Sultan, cloaked in diplomacy but dripping in purpose. Rumor said one of them had asked about her. Zahira holds the invitation carefully. It's not just a dinner, it's a test. No one in the harem is summoned to diplomatic gatherings unless they are being weighed, measured, considered, for something greater or something darker. That evening, she prepares with precision. No gold, no perfume, just deep green silk, the color of forest shadows, the shade worn by watchers, not dancers. When she arrives, the room is dim, the air scented with saffron and secrets. Around a low marble table sit 6 men and 1 woman. Foreign, tall, eyes like smoke. She introduces herself in fluent Arabic. I am Samira of Khazir. I speak for those who listen before they speak. Zahira nods once. Samira smiles. We've heard of you, Zahira, the girl who whispers to fire. The table laughs. Zahira does not. She meets Samira's gaze and replies, whispers are only dangerous when someone decides to hear them. The laughter fades. Respect lingers. They eat, slowly, deliberately, but no one is here for the food. They ask her about poetry, about palace politics, about the Valide's tastes and tapestries, and each question has another inside it, like a box within a box. Zahira answers with care. Not too much, not too little, just enough to be interesting, not enough to be owned. And then the final question comes, from a quiet man in a bronze turban. Would you ever leave this palace, if offered more power elsewhere? The room stills. Zahira places her cup down, smiles once, then answers, the soil may change. But the roots? They remember which way is up. The woman from Khazir leans back. Her eyes say everything. She is ready. But ready for what? Zahira returns to her chamber late that night, the scent of foreign spices still clinging to her sleeves. There's no message waiting, no reprimand, no reward, only her reflection in the bronze mirror and the growing knowledge that she is now more than a palace girl. She is an idea, and ideas don't belong to borders. They belong to history. The next morning, Zahira is summoned, not by a scroll, not by a servant, but by a glance from one of the Valide's personal guards. No words needed. Zahira knows. The Valide has heard. Inside the private solarium, a place where silence grows like jasmine, the Valide waits. She's alone. Seated on a velvet divan, sunlight warming the silver lines in her hair, she looks more statue than woman. Zahira kneels, waits. The Valide speaks without greeting. You were invited. Zahira nods. Yes, my lady. You attended. Yes. A pause. Then the question Zahira expected. Did they ask you to betray us? Zahira meets her eyes. No. They asked if I had outgrown you. Silence. It stretches, thickens, tenses. The Valide leans forward. And what did you say? Zahira doesn't flinch. I said roots remember where up is, but I never said I wouldn't grow taller than the tree. The Valide's lips pressed together, not in disapproval, in consideration. Do you think you are ready to be more than what you were chosen for? Zahira's voice is calm, sharp. I think I was never chosen to begin with. I was placed, and I survived. And now, I build. The Valide rises. She walks to Zahira slowly, each step echoing through stone and sunlight. She lifts Zahira's chin, not to humiliate, to see. No woman has ever left this place with power still in her hands. Zahira breathes deeply. Then let me be the first. A pause. Then, the smallest of nods. Not permission, not blessing. Acknowledgement. The valide turns away. Go, you will not be stopped. But you will be watched. Zahira bows. I would expect nothing less. As she walks back to her chamber, something shifts in the air around her. She is no longer a shadow, no longer a tool, no longer safe. She has said the unsayable. What if the harem is not the end, but the beginning? And from now on, every corridor will remember her footsteps. Power doesn't announce itself anymore. Now it follows Zahira like a scent. Subtle, invisible, impossible to ignore. The women around her start to shift. Some give way when she walks, some linger too long, some smile too quickly. But it's not respect, it's calculation. They've seen what she did to Halima. They know she speaks to envoys, and they all feel it. Zahira is building something they can't name yet. She begins discreetly. She starts teaching the younger girls how to read the Sultan's body language during court appearances. She passes poems through the laundry, lines from banned authors, written in lemon juice that only reveal under firelight. She creates a web, not of loyalty, of awareness. And once they see what she sees, they begin to act like her. Even the kitchen maid, Imani, once invisible, now corrects a visiting noble on the difference between honeyed fig wine and vinegar-soaked dates. That correction earns her a private meeting with the steward. Zahira watches it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. But what she doesn't see is Amira, the girl she shared laughter with. Baths, secrets, candles in the dark. Amira is watching too, and what she sees is not Zahira's rise, she sees her own replacement. One evening, after the outer wing is locked and prayers echo through the corridors, Zahira finds her hairbrush snapped in half, her linen stained with crushed berries, her shoes sliced at the soles, a message, not loud, but personal. She confronts no one. She simply sends a note to the steward requesting double laundering and new shoes. But that night her hands shake slightly as she pins her hair, because this time, it's not poison, it's not a needle, it's a heart turned sour. She writes in her journal, the sharpest betrayals are not from rivals. They are from those who once whispered in your hair. The next morning, Amira smiles at her like nothing's changed, and Zahira smiles back, like everything has. Because now the war isn't just between her and the palace, it's inside her own circle, and she knows, before she can build something new, she may have to burn something old. The signs multiply, missing hair oils, spoiled fruit on her tray, a thread loosened from her favorite robe, right at the hem where a trip could look like fate. Zahira says nothing, because a queen doesn't accuse. She watches, she waits, she remembers. Amira, the girl who once sang to her during rainstorms, who once whispered her fears about growing old alone in a palace that forgets names. Now she leaves her perfume in Zahira's drawer, laced with crushed moth wings, meant to irritate and stain. Small wounds, soft attacks, the kind only former friends know how to deliver. Zahira doesn't flinch, she strategizes, because elsewhere something bigger is unfolding. A message arrives, hidden in a hollowed-out candle. From the West Garden, prepare yourself. The Sultan's advisor requests a private meeting. No one must know. Her breath halts. Not the valide, not the steward, not even Prince Idris, the advisor. The Sultan's most trusted hand, the one who speaks for him behind the curtain, the one who makes appointments, signs decrees, whispers alliances into the wind. Meeting with him means a possibility, a door, a role, a future. Zahira knows what this means. She's no longer just entertaining foreign dignitaries or winning silent battles in velvet corridors. She's being considered for something beyond the harem. But before she can step forward, she must silence the noise behind her. She finds Amira in the courtyard that evening, alone, slicing pomegranate seeds with a silver blade. They sit without speaking for a while. Then Zahira says simply, "You were never my enemy." Amira scoffs, softly, "No, I was your mirror, until you changed your reflection." Zahira leans in, voice low, "You still have time to change yours." But if you come for me again, I won't break you. I'll erase you. Amira doesn't respond. She just places the silver blade down, gently, and walks away. That night, no perfume is tampered with, no robes are sliced, and Zahira dresses for her meeting with the Sultan's advisor in silence. But her eyes are not soft. They are forged, because now she knows. Leaving the harem isn't about escape. It's about becoming the kind of woman the palace fears to cage. The chamber is smaller than she imagined. No throne, no guards, no carpets of gold. Just a table, a single chair, and the Sultan's advisor. He doesn't rise when she enters. He simply gestures toward the seat opposite him. Zahira doesn't hesitate. She sits. Between them lies a scroll. Blank. The advisor speaks with a voice made of dust and iron. You are no longer a girl of the harem. Zahira listens. You are not a concubine, not a servant, not even a threat. His eyes fix on hers. You are a possibility, a pause. Then he rolls the scroll toward her. The Sultan is forming an external intelligence council, silent advisors, shadow diplomats, women trained to see what others miss. Zahira doesn't blink. And you want me to be one of them? The advisor smiles, thin and slow. You already are. This is just the part where you accept it. She looks down at the scroll. No ink, no emblem, just space. Space to write her name. But the price? She must vanish from the harem. No public farewell. No ties to the prince. No legacy among the silks and jasmine-scented nights. She would become a myth. Zahira breathes in slowly. She remembers the baths, the whispers, Halima's half-smile, Amira's betrayal, the prince's eyes, full of recognition and retreat. She remembers the girl who arrived in chains of expectation, and the woman who now sits at the edge of empire. She picks up the quill and signs. One name, not the one she was given, not the one the harem whispered. New one, her own. The advisor nods, stands, leaves, and Zahira, she remains in the room for a moment longer, listening, not for footsteps, but for silence, the kind that follows the closing of one life and the beginning of a legend.